What are these five things that you say rich people do that they think differently to the rest of us, and how we can end up emulating what they do?
No, absolutely, you're dead right. It's not a question of luck. The answers have been studied globally, and they're made available through sources like the Forbes magazines and MSNBC. The number of studies on the differences between poverty and wealth, and how you can go from one to the other. The answers are absolutely available. And the very first one, it's a bit of a philosophical idea. One of the most important things that humanity ever did in terms of our own development is what we call the discovery of ignorance. In other words, it was the first time in our own history that we said, you know what, we don't know the answers and we should find out. The discovery of ignorance happened around the sort of 14th or 15th century, and that was the beginning of the scientific movement. And the whole idea there was saying, rather than turn to guides and gurus and people who claim to have the answers, as though every answer was already known, let's ask questions as though we don't know the answer and go and find out. Now let's apply that to the world of poverty versus wealth. Poor people certainly know that they are poor. I've been there and I was aware of it at the time. It's awful. But what we often don't do is we don't come to that realization that we are poor because we lack specific answers. For most poor people, we stop at, I'm poor because I don't have money. And there's much more to the picture than that. I'll say something quite controversial here. Money doesn't cure poverty. The ability to generate money cures poverty. And that implies certain answers that we need to have. So the very first step is admitting our own ignorance. We're not poor because we lack coins. We're poor because we lack answers. That's our starting point.
Okay, but then perhaps I should have asked this question first, right? Because you said that that's the first of the five. But then before you go to the other four, what defines wealth? When we're talking wealth, I'm hoping against hope that we're not talking about somebody being able to buy a 1 point something million rands car and live in a 3 point something million and acquire debt.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, that's one of the mistakes that people, even in the wealthy side of things, make. Is Michael Jackson earned over $1 billion in his musical career, but he outdebted his earnings, if that makes sense. He spent more than what he earned. Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, he's earned $2 billion since his death.
Died. In fact, he's become richer.
He's much wealthier now that he's dead. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. So what is wealth? Well, let's take the idea of the word rich. Rich implies something different to the median average. And there's actually quite an interesting philosophy built into what I've just said there. For someone to be rich, it means that they are different to most people. And that also implies that they think differently and act differently. Mm-hmm. Now, we'll come back to that one. That's about our third or fourth tip out of the five for how to become wealthy. But it is incredibly important that we distinguish that the very idea rich means not normal. It's not the median average. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, we were talking about the five things. So we did one. What are the other four things?
Okay, so the second thing, the rich people we're talking about self-made wealthy people here. So forget people who have inherited or anything down those lines.
I don't think
that's not useful to us.
Daddy's money.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, though, the majority of billionaires around the world are self-made. Yeah. So it's actually very rare that people become incredibly wealthy simply through inheritance. That's the exception.
Warren Buffett, we can count them. Bill Gates. What's the Facebook guy's name? Mark Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg, yeah, absolutely.
We could go on and on.
Yeah. And in Africa, the stats show that all billionaires in Africa own their own businesses.
Wow.
Isn't that an interesting thought?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So our second idea is the rich do not or did not think like the people around them. They thought like and studied the people above them in wealth terms. Mm-hmm. Now, that's incredibly important because when you are, shall we call it, stuck in a thought community, mm-hmm. and you are all pooling your thoughts about what works, basically it becomes the blind leading the blind because everyone is at the same level. And typically, if you live among either working class people or very poor people, the answers, the solutions that are put forward tend to be about getting a job and getting more pay. Now, just about every study ever done on real wealth says that that's not the path. That's not going to get you there. So the problem is when you are studying the thought patterns of the people people around you, you do not have access to the thought patterns of the people one step up.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to access those thought patterns.
Okay.
And that's where you find very different answers. I mean, just let's take one example of it. Working class people always think it's about getting a promotion or working longer hours in order to get more money.
And the promotion or even the increase is just always standard.
Yeah, it's incremental. It's not going to make a real difference.
It's incremental,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. We're also talking about relatively small amounts of money. I mean, even if you got what a working class person would consider a big raise, say 10, 20,000 rand extra a month, it's not going to make you rich.
Yes.
When we're talking about wealth, that is a whole different dynamic. And the simple answer there is the people at the next level up understand that A, wealth all comes from sales, and B, to become the wealthy person, you have to own the sales, as opposed to doing the sales. Let me explain what that one means. Bill Gates understands that you have to own the sales, but he's not out there selling one computer at a time.
Yes.
That would keep him very poor.
Yes.
But instead, he's got tens of thousands of people who are doing that for him. He
Yes.
owns the sales function, and that multiplies his income. So that's
Wow.
kind of the trick there. So our first one is we've got to understand that we lack answers, the discovery of ignorance. The second one is...
Because remember, people are writing.
Should we make notes?
Yes.
Cool beans. Okay,
Lack
first one.
answers.
First one, the discovery of ignorance. Admit that we don't have the answers.
Yeah.
The problem is not a lack of money. The problem is a lack of answers.
Yes.
That is a seriously important distinction. Second one, the rich people don't think like people around them. They study the people above them. And the
Study
people above them,
you.
people who are earning a lot more, generally look at wealth creation in very different ways to the
Yes.
people around you.
Yes.
They're not talking about getting a job or getting a promotion.
Yes.
They're talking about opening a second, third, and fourth business.
Yes.
Yeah. Agadaks.
Okay. So we're at the third one now.
Third one,
Yes.
the rich know that qualifications help, but qualities are much more important.
You need to qualify that, because what we also don't want is to give people the perception that you don't need to get
Absolutely,
educated.
yeah. In fact, in the book, How the Rich Think, in 50 Ways the Rich Think Differently, I talk about what I call yes buts, where I say that I really have to sort of appeal to the reader and to the listener to say, bear with me here, I'm not saying that this is unimportant, but it's what I call a yes but. So, qualifications do help. Certainly. I mean, I've got a university degree. I studied through UNISA part-time while I was working. But a university degree in and of itself will not make you rich.
Yes.
And I'll say that flat out.
Yes.
And I'll also say, if you don't have access to a high school education or to the possibility of a university degree, that doesn't preclude you from wealth. You can still become stinking rich without either one. It's absolutely possible. I mean, I know a couple of people who own factories and, haven't finished high school, and they have no financial limitations. I mean, just think about what that's like for a second. See a high-end car, want it, buy it, because you can. I want to go overseas on a holiday, and you do because you can. Now, these are people who have not necessarily followed the conventional educational route, but they
So
have
you call
found
that what,
wealth
quality,
answers.
What?
Yeah, okay, so
Qualifications
qualifications
matter,
help, but qualities matter more.
Quality.
Now, what are those qualities? Generally speaking, they are what we call the soft skills qualities. So, leadership, first and foremost, leadership skills, public speaking skills, communication skills, and above all, and this is leadership, the ability to rally people and get people working together toward your goals. So there again, that's becoming the boss of your own company. Okay, so qualifications help, but qualities help much, much more. The studies done on the kind of personalities of people who tend to become self-made millionaires and billionaires indicates two interesting qualities. The one is that they are relentless drivers.
Yeah.
So in other words, these are people who just have a lot of push. When they want to get something done, they darn well get it done. They don't doubt themselves, they don't vacillate backwards and forwards, they don't sort of get emotional,
go
and
for it.
they simply focus on it and do it. And if they can't find one way to do it, they go around the back door and they find another way. So that quality of being a driver, a pusher, is almost synonymous with self-made billionaires. You have to have it. Good news is it can be developed.
Yes.
So if you are a very shy, quiet person, that's not a wealth disqualifier. It just means that you've got to find your own ways that line up with your personality and who you are to keep driving your goals relentlessly.
Got it.
Second quality that all rich people seem to have in common, they're fascinated by numbers. Now, here's the interesting thing. It doesn't mean that they are mathematical people at all, not even slightly. What they've done is they've found a metric that works for them, and they focus on that. So say, for example, me, I write books. My metric might be, how many books can I write? And I become fascinated and absorbed by that number and growing that number. Now, for you, that might be things like how many songs can I write, how many businesses can I start, how many countries can I go into, whatever the case might be. And you often find that beyond a certain level of wealth, self-made millionaires and billionaires don't really care how wealthy they are in terms of the money itself. What they're interested in is the chasing a metric. So, for example, they might say, well, that billionaire that I'm competing with has X amount. I need to get past that. Yes, yeah. So it actually stops being about money. It starts being about chasing a number.
Are you almost competing with yourself?
It's spot on. Couldn't have said it better myself. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So you find something that's meaningful to you and you chase that number radically. Yeah. Next one. What are we up to here? That brings us to number 4, I believe.
We're going to number 5.
Okie dokie.
Because number 4 is you find something that's meaningful to you.
Find a metric and chase it.
You chase after it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 5 then, and you know what, I might just give you a bonus number 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to cheat today. Okay, so this one is going to sound a little complex, but I'll explain it. The rich don't focus on work. They focus on money-generating behavior. Okay.
That's almost similar to number 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It leads us off in a different direction, though. So, we are often taught that work is noble, and I do believe that. But it is entirely possible to work incredibly hard, backbreakingly hard, your whole life, and still die poor. Yes.
Yes.
So there's something missing from that equation.
Yes.
Money-generating behavior. Let's take a very simple example. Let's say you are you want to be a writer, and at first you decide you're going to go and write 20 different articles for your local newspaper, local community paper. You're not going to make any money on that. If you're lucky, you'll get paid, but chances are you won't.
The most you get is a byline.
Exactly that. And you've worked incredibly hard, but the reward, the remuneration is incredibly small. If you look at raising your value and you practice money-generating behavior, instead of wasting your time on writing lots of small articles, you're going to put a lot of thought and focus into getting one big one.
Yes.
So writing something for, like, say, Forbes or National Geographic or something at a high level where your input is much more highly rewarded. And everything that I do as a speaker and author really comes down to this one dynamic. I talk about raising your value.
Yes.
Because you can do the same thing and get a small amount of money or an enormous amount of money, depending on how you've raised your perceived value. And I mentioned this the last time I was here. I mean, if you're, for example, an unknown consultant, you might do a bit of work for a company, they pay you X tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, which is good.
Yes.
But then Richard Branson drops by, does a half-hour presentation, and they add 3 more zeros to his fee.
In fact, I heard yesterday that Barack Obama was
Yes.
offered $400,000 American dollars just to come and speak for 30 minutes. I was like, wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Multiply that by 13.5 in
Yeah.
the current rand-dollar exchange.
Absolutely. You're talking well over 5 million rand. Yeah, that's sort of off the top of my head
30
there.
minutes of talking.
Absolutely. And it's got nothing to do with how hard he's worked.
Yes.
It's got to do with how he's perceived and how he's positioned and the perceived value of what he does.
Absolutely.
And you can do that in any career line, regardless of what you're into, what your passion is. You can find ways to exponentially multiply the value of what you do.
Yes.
One quick thought on that one in passing. Most young entrepreneurs undervalue themselves. I see this in the world of speaking. A person gets into the world of professional speaking and they put out their fee. And I look at their fee and I go, dude, you've got to double it. You know, because that's so low
You're
that the
underselling
market won't
yourself.
take you seriously. Yes. And your pricing is part of your total perceptions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so the next one, and
This is the bonus.
this is the bonus one. Now, I've got 50 different ways the rich think differently in the book, so I've had to narrow it down to the ones I like the
thank
most.
You, we appreciate
No,
that.
sure. The rich focus on the top line, not the bottom line.
The rich focus on the top line, and
Not the bottom line. If
What's
you
the
are
difference?
if you are bottom line oriented, you are basically focused on saving and not spending too much money. That is not a recipe for wealth.
Because you need to spend money to make money.
You absolutely
don't
do, yes. And in fact, it's also a matter of where you place your energy. You'll find among working class and poorer people, they tend to spend 80% of their time, when they think of wealth, they think about saving money.
Yes.
Now, you can save yourself rich, provided you've got 70 years to do it. Okay, so basically, it's what they call wheelchair wealth.
Yes.
You know, it's almost pointless.
You're too old to even enjoy it.
Too old to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Now, that's the problem with saving. We do need to save, and we should not spend in irresponsible ways. But I reckon we should be flipping that 80-20 rule. 20% of your time goes to saving and to making sure you're not spending irresponsibly. 80% of your energy goes to generating new income. Focus on the top line, on how much is going in, not how much is going out. And I always use an analogy for that one. Say, for example, you are a group of hunters, and you're living in prehistoric times, and you've gone out and you've got yourself 3 buffalo, and winter is setting in. Now, you've got this debate on your hands. Do you keep the 3 buffalo and try and make them last through winter?
Yeah.
And you know in the back of your mind that 3 is not enough. You're in debt. You're going to starve to death that winter. Or do you take one of the buffalo, let the hunters eat it for strength, and go out and hunt more buffalo? Now, you'll always have the bean counter in the cave, and that's your accountant-type personality who says, no, we must save, we must conserve, we must be responsible.
Yes.
You'll save yourself to death. If 3 is not enough, you're still going to starve.
Yeah.
By saving it, you're just going to starve more slowly.
Yes,
That's all.
Slow motion.
Yeah. So actually the responsible thing to do is to hunt for more buffalo. It's about increasing the top line, about generating more income. That's always the path forward.
So my beautiful colleague here, Romy Titus, when she heard what we're talking about when we were pitching, the topic to the listeners this morning, she says, be sure to ask Douglas Kruger himself if he's coming to teach us how to be rich. Is he rich?
That's a darn good question.
Yes.
Okay, I'll answer it openly.
Yes.
I'm driving an E400 Mercedes Coupe, so I'm going to go with yes.
Is that the value of wealth?
Okay,
The car you drive?
let's answer it this way around, because I think this is the more important part.
Yes.
Where did you start versus where are you now?
So where did you start?
Okay, when I was about 12 years old, I had a younger sister, and our family went through some financially hard times, to the point where our local church had to feed us with food baskets. My image of poverty in my own mind is a little box of baby formula that the church used to bring for my sister.
Wow.
We had our power cut off during winters and so forth, and here I am now driving an E-Class Mercedes.
Okay, so you're doing pretty well.
So it's about the change, the difference between where you started versus where you are now.
And again, wealth is subjective, right?
Yeah,
because
of course.
It's subjective to Patrice Mutsipa, to me, to Romy Titus. It is,
Yeah,
right?
and really it's a tool at the end of the day, and that's the way to look at it.
You're
Wealth
rich.
is about being able to access more levers,
you're
do
rich
more
and humble,
things.
It's cute, but you're rich. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Your website.